Forehead fans, as the sun is shining brightly on my face, you know, clearly. I'm Jorge Edwards, and welcome to the Forehead Pregame Show here at Fantasy and Frames. This week we got our great group of analysts here for Fantasy and Frames. First from the Dynasty Rewind, Mike Bauer. How you doing there, Mike?
How you doing today, gentlemen? Good to see you again.
Good to finally have you on this season.
Yeah.
Nate Markham, Brian Ford, Jonathan Klasky. How you all doing, gentlemen?
Did you not have makeup come over this morning? They came with mine, hence the low glow forehead, 5-head that I have.
Yeah, they're going to do a lot more, forehead stuff to help me out here today. I'll try and move in. There we go. That's so bad. I'll just get right up close to the microphone to the screen so I can't miss anything. So before we get into our starts and sits, and before we get into our players outside the top 10 and quarterbacks and tight ends and outside the top 25. And of course, over our Monkey Knife Fight prop bet over unders we're going to take. I'd be remiss if we did not mention the condolences that we're all sending over here from Fantasy and Frames to the Tagliere family for the passing of Mike Tagliere yesterday. That was not anything I think a lot of us were expecting. We were all hoping for the best. He'd been in the ICU dealing with COVID. I want to say it's been like a month now, if not a little bit over a month at this point. And just hearing the news, the family, the friends, the people over at Fantasy and Pros, everybody that's been directly affected, we just want to give our condolences and say that we're thinking about you. And the Fantasy Pros set up a GoFundMe account to help out with the families, the costs that come along with this tragic event. And I want to say kudos to the community who rallied. I believe they had a goal of like $100,000 they wanted to meet, and within an hour and a half, they doubled it.
Wow!
So it really just is a testament to the people out there. So thank you very much for those who did that for his behalf. So with that, we send our condolences. But let's get on to business. Let's start talking about some start-sit questions to get you ready for Week 3 of the fantasy football season. I'll open the floor to anybody. Brian, do you have any start-sit questions that you might have for your roster?
I have two on my mind, actually. So one of them is half PPR, and it's my second flex spot. Right now, I have Jamal Williams versus Baltimore in there, but I have some other options, including Tony Pollard versus Philadelphia. And, well, actually, that's pretty much it. That's really the only other person I was considering. So Jamal Williams or Tony Pollard.
So last I saw, Swift is questionable, right? He's dealing with an injury, right? He has a questionable designation?
Yeah, he's expected to play from what I saw, but he is a little banged up. I think it's the groin.
The groin. We need that Hans Moleman thing that came up. I think we talked about that on Wednesday. Hans Moleman drop. Sorry. So just thinking about this, it's hard to ignore Tony Pollard's usage over the past few weeks here with Week 1 as well as last week. And so that is a great question. Given the nature of this matchup tomorrow night for Monday Night Football, I don't know. I feel this is going to be a high-scoring game. The over-under, I believe, is what is it? It is 51.5. Give me Tony Pollard this week. Nate, what are your thoughts? You are muted.
Yeah, let me jump out of here real quick. I'm having lag issues. I'll be right back.
Easy way out. All right, Bauer, let's ask you that. What are your thoughts there? And you are muted as well. There you go. Very good.
Okay. I'm sorry. What was the question again? I was bringing something else up.
Jamal Williams or Tony Pollard this week?
I think I'd probably lean Jamal Williams. Surprisingly, the Eagles have a pretty good run defense. Kind of curious to see how that game's going to go as a whole. But Jamal Williams has been getting actually a lot more carry and a lot more play than I expected him to. Could we also say that the days of the bell cow running back are dead? Because it feels like it. You know what I mean? Like,
it feels like the ones that are remaining are slowly dropping off.
Yeah. I don't understand. Why are they not giving Zeke the ball down there in Dallas?
they're either, from my perspective, they're thinking it's a 17-game season now, and let's just preserve our guys for when we need them down the stretch. Jonathan, what are your thoughts here? Tony Pollard or Jamal Williams?
I'd probably lean Pollard, basically for the same reasons that you gave. I think it'll be. It's obviously a much higher over/under. It'll probably be a much closer game. But yes, I'd probably lean Pollard just because we've seen that he's still getting work. He's still getting goal line work. But I do like Jamal Williams, but I think on this I'd probably go Pollard.
Nate, to round us out, who are you going to take? Jamal Williams or Tony Pollard?
I feel like Pollard will get his regardless of what happens. I think Williams is a little more dependent upon Swift missing some snaps, and I hate to bank on health playing into it. I think we all love Jamal Williams. I think the last week and a half, his social media presence and everything has really made you want to play him. But put your feelings aside and go with the fact that I think Pollard has a little easier path to I'd say solid touches. Each touch should be more beneficial than against Baltimore's front.
All right. Let's go to an over. I have two over/under questions. I have two questions. Certain set questions.
Gambling degenerate.
Yeah, I know, right? James Robinson or Trey Sermon? Who wants to start us off with that one? Brian, you want to kick us off with that one?
It's interesting. My second start sit involves J-Rob as well. That's a tough one. There's a lot of people saying, that this is the week for Trey Sermon, and the people who have, stood by, this is the week they're going to see it. I think neither defense is good in the Jacksonville, Arizona game, and I think J-Rob can get touches in the pass game and the run game. I think Sermon is a little more game script dependent, probably. So I'm going to go with J-Rob.
What about you, Jonathan? What are your thoughts there? J-Rob or Trey Sermon?
I'd probably lean Trey Sermon. Eli Mitchell was someone that I wrote about in the running back matchup column. Obviously, now looking doubtful. I'm not as confident with Sermon compared to Mitchell, but I think given that how many other running backs on the 49ers are out, I think he'll get the majority of the work. Packers haven't been great against the run for a while. I'd probably lean Sermon.
So, Mike, from a dynasty perspective, what were your thoughts of Trey Sermon when he came out this year going to the 49ers?
So I wasn't the biggest Trey Sermon fan. He didn't really do anything that great to me in college. I thought he was a decently powerful runner. Didn't catch the ball all that well all the time. But then again, it's one of those things where you do have to take into consideration landing spot. Then why is he inactive week 1? Gets a concussion week 2. That looks like he's going to be starting week 3 because Elijah Mitchell is doubtful, which screws a lot of my lineups over, by the way. It was one of those things. I was plugging him in because he was getting a lot of run, 19 carries week 1, 17 carries week 2. Is this week one of those backfields that you just stay away from?
Well, let's think about who his competition is for carries right now. Kerryon Johnson, who they just activated on the roster today.
Is it?
Granted, knowing how things work, right?
Yeah, it's Trenton Cannon and Jacques Patrick are the 4 mouths to feed out of 33 touches on average per game.
Yeah, the Packers, I think they're banged up along the defensive line also this week. This on paper is a good matchup for whoever the starting running back is going to be. And this is going to be the dumbest thing you're probably going to. Well, let me not say that just yet because I could probably drop a few more gems before the show's over. But one of the dumbest things I was going to say today was when looking at that one run when Trey Sermon had it against the Eagles before he fell and hit his head on the ground and got concussed. He was running pretty aggressively through those holes, and then he tripped up and hurt his head, and the rest is history. All throughout training camp, I was reading that he basically looked like Marshawn Lynch in that backfield during training camp in terms of the violent way he would run, attacking the holes, attacking the line of scrimmage, getting those extra yards, which is a huge compliment and great for us fantasy managers who rostered him a few rounds earlier than probably others would. Yeah. So Nate, are you concerned with the running back rotation in San Francisco? Or are
No.
are you James Robinson or Trey Sermon? I guess I should ask.
Question one, I'm not concerned with anybody really pilfering too many touches from Trey Sermon. I don't know if it's such a pot. I think James Robinson's upside in this, if I had to choose between the two, falls on the receiving game upside. I think that he'll be a little bit more heavily involved. That negative game script, assumed negative game script. I think that against Arizona, shockingly, is not a larger spread than I think I would have thought. I would have expected double digits almost, but I think it's 7.5 is last I saw, maybe 8. So a little better than I expected. But I'm not worried about Trey Sermon's touches. So, I mean, I have them really close to one another. I have Robinson a little bit ahead of Sermon, so I'll have to go with my my rankings.
Right.
But I think both are solid flex plays. I mean, you have to start Jamie Robinson as your RB1, so, I mean, that might not be as –
Why? Because I took him in every single league that I basically take part in? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Brian, let's go to your second start sit question. It also involved James Robinson. What's your second one?
Yeah, so with Dalvin Cook not expected to play, full PPR, Alexander Madison or James Robinson?
Man, that is a good question.
I've never been thrilled with Madison. Madison has always been – I feel like he's been – the hype around Alexander Madison has – it's never been worth the squeeze, even when in situations when he's gotten the opportunities. And I feel like we see the backup situation and we think, oh, look how good Dalvin is behind that line. Look how opportunistic this situation is. And then he falls flat on his face. I mean, we have to really go back. I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's going to take I think we have to put two games together to see one expected output out of Madison. Am I wrong in that?
Okay, so as you were just talking about that, I just looked this up because I too thought to myself, yeah, last year is when the Madison hype got really over, and right. My memory told me I don't think he really lived up to expectations when he actually finally got the opportunity that we were all thinking he was going to get when Dalvin Cook went out. Turns out, against Seattle, no doubt, last year, he got 20 attempts for 112 yards. So he got in half PPR scoring 15.1 points on top of the 3 receptions and 24 yards receiving. The only other time he got in the 20s was in Week 17 against Detroit last year for 95 yards and a touchdown. So he's going against Seattle again this year. He has to be a volume. I don't think he's as dynamic as a runner as Dalvin Cook. I think he's more of a volume person who just happens to run in the same offense as Dalvin Cook.
You think he gets the volume in this?
That's the thing. And so
I don't see that.
And so I think we can kind of combine your question, Brian, into my question is because one of my starts of questions is, do I start KJ Osborne in one of these leagues? I have Gabriel Davis in one league and KJ Osborne in another. And you look at KJ Osborne for the Vikings, you got Thielen there, the red zone monster. You got Justin Jefferson there. You look at KJ Osborne, rookie, he had 9 targets in week 1 for 76 yards and 11 points. Last week against Arizona, 6 targets for 91 yards and a touchdown for 17.6 points. Like hello sunlight. This offense, I don't know. This defensive matchup, it is. What do you guys think, Jonathan? Do you know anything about KJ? Or let's go. Do you know about KJ Osborne a lot?
I mean, all I was going to say was that he's been getting a decent amount of work with Cook there. I mean, I feel as though this is going to be quite a high scoring game. I do quite like KJ Osborne this week. I think he seems to have a fairly solid floor. I'm not sure how many targets he's had both games, but he has been much more involved than anyone expected in both games.
Right.
Yeah, 12 targets, and he's caught 100% of the passes. 12 targets, 12 receptions.
So going back to you, Brian. So let me get this right. Justin Jefferson, fantasy viable. Adam Thielen, fantasy viable. KJ Osborne, fantasy viable. Yet Dalvin Cook still got his in the first 2 weeks with these 3 wide receivers just soaking up targets. And against the matchup against Seattle, I don't know. I'd feel more comfortable in this case with Alexander Madison, even though my initial thought was he doesn't produce when given the opportunity. Mike, what are your thoughts on KJ Osborne?
Can I just ask Brian one question? Do we know who Alexander Madison's backup is? I mean, I don't.
I forget. I think I'm gonna mispronounce the last name. Kenny Nwango or something like that.
Okay.
Was hurt a little bit and was gonna maybe do kick returns. I think he's the third running back.
Okay.
Is Amir Abdullah still there or not?
Or CJ Ham or somebody? Or
I don't know.
More of a fullback.
okay.
The thing is, we know about Carlos Hyde, and we know about James Robinson in Jacksonville. We know Carlos Hyde's a thorn in the side.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I feel like Alexander Madison is going to get close to 100% of the carries. And if Dalvin Cook can get his, like Jorge said, there's no reason to think that Alexander Madison can as well. So, thanks, Chev. Appreciate it. I don't personally.
I do. All right.
I miss it. I still need to get you a Nathan Gary Eagles jersey, Bauer. Yeah,
Please don't waste your money on that.
Probably on sale.
I don't think they ever make it. Because he was awful. So what am I thinking about KJ Osborne? I don't know. I don't know what to think. Is he going to be one of those flash in the pan guys that everybody dumps a ton of fab money on? And you know what I mean? That then he just fizzles out in a couple weeks. Like, I can't even think of it. Like Travis Fulgham did last year. You know what I mean? Like, is he this year's Travis Fulgham? Because after him, the Vikings have a guy named Emir Smith-Marset out of Iowa, who was I loved him as a prospect coming out. Can't get on the field yet. You know, we thought with BC Johnson getting hurt, it would be Emir Smith-Marset's turn to kind of just go up there and get in the lineup. But KJ Osborne's been killing it. So I will say this. You asked me once, how long could we start Darrell Henderson last year? Remember that? I'm going to apply it towards KJ Osborne. Start him till you can't.
Fair enough.
Sometimes you don't know, and you're gonna get a bad score in your lineup. So you've been killing it 100% of receptions. Start him till you can't.
Nate, do you have any start sit questions that you may have for some of your rosters, or if not, I have
no, nothing that really. I mean, I'm sure I do, but I think we don't need to worry about terrible situation. What's up? You look blinded right now. I feel terrible.
I feel so uncomfortable right now. It is ridiculous. Yeah, it's okay. Sorry, I got to get it right here. All right, let's go to one situation here. We got DeAndre Hopkins is dealing with a rib injury. He is expected to play, though. I guess the nature of how long he's going to play, or how bad it really is, this injury is a concern. And while it's not directly correlated to this player, does this do anything for Rondale Moore? Obviously, different positions. Is Rondale Moore? You saw what he's been doing the past couple weeks. You saw what he did last week against Minnesota. Brian, what are your thoughts on Rondale Moore as a potential fantasy option, even with a 60% DeAndre Hopkins on the field today?
Yeah, so it was interesting to see Twitter this week. You had one camp saying, well, if D-Hop is limited, that's good for Rondale Moore smash play. And then you had other folks saying, actually, Hopkins playing more is good for Rondale Moore because of the coverages and that sort of thing. If you look at Rondale Moore last week, there was a really long TD on blown coverage, which kind of, I think, maybe padded the stats a little bit. I do like him as somebody who, is right now outside of the wide receiver 2 rankings, I think, in Fantasy Pros ECR. So I think I'm starting him in some leagues, and I think he'll have a good game. I mean, Jacksonville's defense is bad, so the ceiling is there for sure.
All right. All right. Let's get into some flex options here. Yeah, go ahead, Brian. Or Matt. Wow. Mike.
Try again. Third time's charm. I do want to say one thing, Brian. You're talking about the blown tackle leading to the fluffed up stats. Here's the real stat about Rondale Moore. He's leading the wide receiver room in targets right now. He has 13 on the season. DeAndre Hopkins has 12, and Christian Kirk has 9. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's the real telling stat. I think I was wrong about Rondale Moore. I don't have him anywhere in any of my dynasty or redraft leagues. Kind of wishing I did now. So it's one of those things. Like I said, leading the wide receiver room in targets. It's
at a nearly 3-to-1 being out snapped. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins has over 120 snaps to Rondale Moore's 48. So it's such. I mean, that's the crazy thing. Is imagine if he starts to see 75% of the snap share each week. what he can do with it. It is impressive.
Yeah, that's actually what I was just about to say. He's played on less than 50% of snaps in both weeks. I think last week it was only at like 40% or something like that. So, as you said, I think we'll continue to see him kind of get more and more involved.
Yeah, and Brian, you hit the nail on the head. That's the age old as long as Twitter's been around, or as long as arguments have been around, is the chicken or the egg conversation with all these players. Oh, he's better. Is Calvin Ridley better without Julio Jones? Oh, he's better with Julio because they take attention away. And then some of those unfold when you have the two alphas. But it's this third receiver that has this rise to prominence or potential rise that we don't know if you take away that player, what's going to happen. And then you're going to be 50-50. The people that said, oh, he's only going to be as good because he won't have to be double teamed. If it goes their way, see, I told you so. And if it doesn't, he never had the talent or the opportunity to just too great. Can't please everybody.
Shevin's got a start sit question for us. Chase Claypool to the moon today with Deontay out. I hope so. Well, let's think about this. Mike Hilton, the slot cornerback, right, coming over from Pittsburgh, going to the Cincinnati Bengals. We were talking about this on the IDP show on Wednesday or on Thursday. This is a great matchup for the passing game for the Steelers. Not so much from a running perspective, although Najee will get the volume, he'll get his. It's not going to be pretty, I think, but he'll get his production. But what are your thoughts, Nate?
No, I was going to say I think that it is Chase Claypool. You touched on the one important aspect about Mike Hilton. And granted, if you want to go over to Fantasy and Frames, you can read it in a little bit more detail. But I don't want to call it a revenge game narrative. But Mike Hilton lining up in the slot against Juju, historically on the season so far, Mike Hilton is, he only allows an 82.6% passer rating, which is third best amongst all cornerbacks right now. Juju, who's lined up in the slot, should see plenty of Mike Hilton, maybe some bracket coverage over the top as well. And I think Chase Claypool one-on-one outside against, who is that, Eli Apple. I believe, he has that favorable matchup. Personally, I think this could be a huge Chase Claypool game, especially for DFS lineups.
Nice. All right, let's go into quarterbacks and tight ends outside the top 10 that we are interested in. I'll start us off here. Gimme, and I think I wrote about it. I think Teddy wrote about him in the start sit, and Zach wrote about him in the favorable matchups for quarterbacks. Daniel Jones against this Atlanta Falcons defense. Give me all the Daniel Jones you can get. He is the quarterback. 6 in fantasy points per game, scoring with 24.9. Daniel Jones is a dual threat factor in fantasy football that you should take seriously. Words I never thought I would ever actually utter. But you know what? He's been kind of showing it this season. And against this defensive matchup, which you should not be scared of in the least for Atlanta. Give me all the Daniel Jones for all the over-under prop bets that are out there, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. Hit the over when it comes to Giants today, or at least for Daniel Jones. Does anybody disagree with that? Nope. Okay, cool. We got Malcolm joining us again. Malcolm, you were with us on Wednesday. Welcome back, buddy. We got Kirk Cousins. Was it Christian Kirk or Corey Davis this week? I'm all on board this Cardinals passing game. Give me Christian Kirk. Corey Davis had a great week 1. I'm not seeing that happen this week. The secondary for the Broncos is no joke. They're one of the best secondaries in the NFL. Even when Patrick Surtain came in as Ronald Darby went out due to injury last week, what did he do? He became one of the best rated defenders at the cornerback position for the Broncos. He even had an interception last week. I'm not worried about Corey Davis doing well. I guess I am worried and not worried about Corey Davis doing anything from a fantasy perspective that you should be caring about this week. If anything, I'm worried more about the slot position for the Jets. Worried as in if I'm the Broncos defense, I'm worried about the slot position, but not so much Corey Davis. What about your thoughts, Jonathan?
So Corey Davis was actually one where I had a start sit decision because he's a guy that I really liked coming into the season. First week we saw we saw plenty of targets. We saw in the preseason, he was hyper targeted by Wilson. So I kind of still like him. There's part of me which thinks he might have been a focus for the Patriots last week just to kind of take out that number one option. So I'm not completely out on Corey Davis. But so I basically, for my sit decision, I would probably go with Corey Davis over Christian Kirk so far. Christian Kirk's someone that I don't know, to me, I can't quite trust. I also really like Rondale Moore, and I think he'll kind of see a lot. I think he'll slowly progress to be the number 2 target for the Cardinals. So I would personally go with Davis. Sorry, I was going to say, so I need to sit one of Corey Davis, Tim Patrick, or Laviska Shenault.
Mike?
Well, Laviska Shenault's banged up right now, is he not? Do we know if he's playing?
I think he was full participation on Friday.
All right, so you have to bench one of Laviska, Tim Patrick. Who was the third one again?
And Corey Davis. Actually, I've got Darnell Mooney on the bench as well.
He's also questionable, I think, this week.
Yeah.
He's always questionable.
I would probably bench Tim Patrick out of those.
All right, we got another question from Malcolm. Latavius Murray, Alexander Madison, or Myles Gaskin? Pick one. I love me some Myles Gaskin, but it's Madison for me. Brian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd have to lean Madison on that one too. Latavius Murray's, I think, a distant third on that group.
Nate, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I would lean Madison. I do like Gaskin. I think Mike made an excellent point earlier. Is that if there's a running back that you could bank on receiving 90+% of the running back touches this week, I think Madison has as good a chance as anybody in the league right now. So I think that you have to just set that established floor a little bit higher than what Gaskin can and the others can deliver.
And
Right.
I mean, the Dolphins looked awful last week with Jacoby Brissett. So I think his upside is very limited.
Even in DFS, are you all?
I'm sorry, real quick. Tua is
Yeah.
on IR as well, so you're going to be dealing with Jacoby Brissett for a couple weeks.
Because which brings me to another question. Given that situation at the quarterback position for Miami, even in DFS, are you taking a gamble on Will Fuller now that he's supposed to be playing this week, Nate?
I am not I wasn't real thrilled with Tua's connection or potential on deep passes with Will Fuller, but I was proven wrong in some regards that Tua actually wasn't as bad on deep passes in college as what I think was led to believe. Hasn't necessarily shown it at the NFL level yet, but at limited sample, of course. And so with Brissett, no, I mean, do they have any rapport together? I mean, granted, maybe they were working together on the sideline. It just seems like that's a couple week worth of timing to get him even involved in that offense.
All right. Let's go to another quarterback outside the top 10. Brian, who do you got for us?
So I don't know how popular this pick is going to be, but coming in at number 21 in Fantasy Pros ECR rankings, Joe Burrow. Even without T. Higgins, I think you got a bit of a banged up Steelers defense. I think Boyd's going to eat. Got a lot of targets that way. I think it's a pretty good matchup, and I think as far as being outperforming the rank of 21, if you're streaming or something like that, I think he can do that.
I think Nate, every single pass rusher on this defense for the Steelers is basically out today. They had to go and get people off the street to fill in the pass rushing role, right?
It's bad. I mean, it's not to the point that I still feel good about Cincinnati's O-line, but it's the one time when this game they might actually have a little bit of I'd say time for Joe Burrow to find somebody downfield. Might be a Jamar Chase game, just because I think that Mink is going to be probably on the slot against Boyd, or at least trying to limit that work. I like Burrow though a lot better in this week than if they had T.J. Watt and they had a healthy Devin Bush and everybody else back.
All right, Jonathan.
List them all.
Jonathan, who's a quarterback that you have outside the top
10? So one who I'm really interested to see this week, even as a Green Bay fan, is Justin Fields. We don't need to go into running quarterbacks and the cheat code that they are in fantasy, but yeah, I'm really interested to see how he takes to the next level. I mean, he rushed 10 times last week, So it's that's going to be a really interesting one to see this week. And
All right. Malcolm's back. Would Sammy Watkins be a good play over Corey Davis or Christian Kirk? My immediate thought would say no. Anybody else think Watkins could be a sneaky play this week or not taking the chance? Nope. My head shaking no. All right. So Malcolm, no. Don't do it. Let's go to the tight end position. Nate, give us one outside the top 10 that you think has that you're pretty high on this week.
At tight end?
Yeah.
Jared Cook and Mike. Here, we'll
use on my list as well.
Yeah, we'll piggyback. I'll give you guys a stat. Okay, well, I don't mind sharing. I mean, there should be plenty of, I'd say, balls to go around in LA and plenty for Cook to see, and we can all throw some stats. I'll give one. He's 5th in the NFL in targets. I'll give another one. He's 3rd in red zone targets. Not in the NFL. Yeah, he's 3rd in the NFL amongst tight ends, not overall.
Right.
That would have been a little hyperbolic. But, 3rd in red zone targets, which is amounted to nothing, unfortunately. Actually, negative yardage. So that's not a good stat. But what it means is that Justin Herbert does trust looking Jared Cook's direction in the red zone. The Chiefs and the Chargers should be a pretty high-scoring game. I could see Cook getting, 3 or 4 catches for 40, 50, and a touchdown and firmly put him in that top 6 tight end conversation by week's end.
All right. Mike, do you have a tight end for us outside the top 10 and half PPR?
Yeah. How can we not want to start Robert Tonyan? I mean, he's number 12, or I'm sorry, number 13 right now out of tight end ranks. Guy's been good all year. He's been good since last year. My boy Jay Sternberger got released. So, up to Jay's. Did I see that he got picked up by Seattle?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
So everyone that said, give it up, it's over. No. I'm never giving it up. As long as he's rostered, I'm just going to be But for now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to start Robert Tonyan. I have way more exposure to him than I thought I did. Probably have him in about 60% of my leagues, which is about 14 leagues or so. So he's either in my tight end spot, or if I have a better tight end, I'm throwing him in the flex. Actually, Nate, there's a redraft league I'm in. I drafted Evan Ingram to be my starter, and I ended up picking up Jared Cook off waivers and starting him over Ingram.
I'd say in 90% of my leagues, I have probably Cook or Tonyan, and the other are the times when I actually went heavy with Waller or Kelsey, and those just so few opportunities to get those guys that usually you have to wait. But yeah, so that's a good one. Jonathan, who was yours? Sorry, Jorge.
Kittle's been a massive disappointment this year too.
Yeah.
As far as fantasy wise, they had him blocking all week, or all game last week, and he looked really good blocking. But unfortunately, it doesn't get us any fantasy points.
I think he'll bounce back this week, Kittle. I think he could be in line for a big game.
Who do you have, Jonathan?
So the one that I noted, so I have Jared Cook, but then I also noted down Pat Fryermuth as well, who it's probably not someone you're starting in redraft leagues, but maybe in DFS it might be an interesting play. Obviously, with Deontay Johnson out, I mean he's had something like 10 plus targets in something like 9 of the last 11 regular season games. Deontay Johnson, so there's a lot to go around today, and so those like short to intermediate routes. I think there could be. It could be an interesting one to see there.
So somebody mentioned, I believe it was you, Mike, just now, Evan Ingram. Where is he? He is the tight end 34, according to expert consensus.
Yeah.
Potentially coming back this week against Atlanta. Is anybody taking a shot on Evan Ingram this week in any format? Brian, are you?
I must confess, I do have like 2 shares of Ingram, and I am starting him in one league because of the matchup with Atlanta and my dearth of tight ends on that team. So it's not the craziest thing. I think maybe the 34 ranking is people may not have updated theirs, now that he's expected to play. So
that's a good point.
We'll see.
Speaking of rankings, head over to fantasyandframes.com and check out our weekly rankings up there for offense and IDP. Brian, before we quit tight end, do you have a tight end for us that you want to bring up?
I don't know if people are going to like this one. It's hard for me to give up on this guy, but Jonnu. I think New Orleans stuffs the run. I don't like the wide receivers much on New England. I think Mac Jones finds some intermediate passes for an athletic Jonnu, and he's ranked 14, so he's outside the top 10. So I'll go Jonnu.
All right, let's go to the running back position outside the top 25. Nate, give us a guy that you think people should be paying attention to.
Outside of, so we've mentioned quite a bit of the people so far in a lot of these start-sit questions, which is not uncommon considering those are going to be those relative. Right outside the top 20, I think Javonte Williams is one of those guys that this week, and again in a plus-plus matchup against the Jets. If we look at what's happened over the last 2 weeks, Jonathan, I know that this is your second half as an RB1 bold prediction, but I think it's looking less and less bold each week goes past, because what we're seeing is Javonte just outproducing Melvin Ingram with the total snaps and with every opportunity. Take away the 70-yard rush, which is important to know that he has that potential for that breakaway. But, he's been out-touched and out-snapped the last 2 weeks in a row, consistently getting better and better for Javonte. And the yards per, the yards after contact is nearly double Javonte outproducing Melvin Ingram or Melvin Gordon. So he's gotten more and more opportunities. He's making more with that. And I think that this is a definite positive game script against the Jets, where we can see him actually get that 18 to 20 touch mark versus the 13 that he had as a high last week.
Brian, who's somebody in the running back position that you're interested in?
So we talked a lot about Madison, so I'm going to go with a deeper cut here ranked at number 40, Michael Carter. So I think if the Jets are going to keep this close in any way, they're going to have to run the ball. We talked about the good secondary for Denver. I don't think they're going to rely on Zach Wilson chucking it to stay in the game. He's still developing. We saw 4 interceptions last week. Tevin Coleman's out. Carter's been getting more work each week. I've got him going in a few of my deeper dynasty leagues. So Michael Carter at running back 40.
I'm going to go with the running back 28. Sorry, I have to sneeze, but I don't know when it's going. Here we go. Give me Kenyon Drake. Yeah, playing 57.9% of snaps in that backfield for the Vegas Raiders, going against the Miami Dolphins. I'm not scared of this Dolphins defensive line. The secondary, yes, but not the defensive line in linebacker situations, stopping the run. Derek Carr, he got hurt last week against Pittsburgh. How banged up is he really? I think he was questionable all the way through Thursday rather. Again, with this secondary being what it is for Miami, I think you have to temper your expectations for the passing game outside of Darren Waller for the Raiders. So I think the running game is going to be emphasized a little bit more. I'm not concerned about Peyton Barber, maybe at the goal line, but in terms of getting your yardage through the air, out of the backfield, or on the ground, I think Kenyon Drake is a pretty decent play this week that you should be paying attention to. Mike, who's somebody outside the top 25 at running back that you're interested in?
So he didn't have a good week last week, but I'm sticking with Nyheim Hines. He's just people are like, oh, he doesn't carry the ball a lot. Yeah, last week, 1 carry for 5 yards, only 1 catch for 17 yards. But Jacob Eason did end up playing most of that game. Carson Wentz is officially listed as active for today. And in week 1 against Seattle, 9 carries, 34 yards, 6 receptions, 48 yards, no touchdowns anywhere. But that's still a decent stat line if we're talking about a flex here. You know what I mean? You're obviously not drafting Nyheim Hines to be your running back 1 or 2. And he is projected for a third of a touchdown today, as per Pro Football Reference. I don't know how you project a third of a touchdown, but
Okay, Brian, let's go to wide receiver outside the top 25. Who's somebody that you're interested in?
So one of my guys is going to be Rondell Moore. We've talked plenty about him. And another guy, Nate already kind of put some cold water on, but I like Tyler Boyd. I think he eats. I think, he had, I think it was 9 targets last week, 7 catches, 73 yards. I think Burrow trusts him. I think he's kind of a safety blanket for him on a team that doesn't really have a tight end. I think, Tyler Boyd can outperform his rank of wide receiver 39 at ECR.
Jonathan, who's somebody at wide receiver that you're interested in outside the top 25?
So I really like Sterling Shepard this week. We've already spoken about Daniel Jones. And then Golladay has been banged up this week. I'm not 100% sure if he's playing or not. But I mean, even if he is, from the sounds of it, he would be limited. Sterling and then Shepard has seen plenty of targets from Jones so far this season. So yeah, I really like him this week.
Nick, how about you outside of 25 wide receivers?
I will say, number one, Brian, I did not mean to throw cold water on Tyler Boyd. I do have Tyler Boyd within the top. I have him as my wide receiver 28 on the week.
Okay.
So I do have him and Jamar Chase. It's kind of they're right by each other. It's hard to decide because Minkah Fitzpatrick might not just shadow exclusively. I mean, he could very easily be tasked with taking Joe Mixon out of the game in some capacity as well. But I'm pivoting to a situation in Buffalo where Cole Beasley is in a situation this week where I think that he could be heavily peppered with targets. I've talked about Cole Beasley ad nauseum this week so far with everybody is that Washington, if you look historically at their defense on the season, all 2 games of it, they run a zone coverage on the majority of the plays. And what that means for Josh Allen this week, Josh Allen's been kind of tasked to look short and not intermediate, contrary to last year where he really took advantage of those, that 7 to 15 yard depth and really made hay with it. This week, I think that he's going to look to Cole Beasley underneath. He's going to feed him early and often. It's going to open up the deep ball a little bit more so because I think that they're going to have their hands full with the run game, or at least the lack thereof that Washington might present. Cole Holcomb will line up against most likely Beasley, but Holcomb, despite being a great linebacker, does allow people to catch the ball, which is okay. It's good for Holcomb from IDP, and it's good for Beasley from offensive standpoint. So there's a 2-in-1. There's an IDP and a wide receiver all wrapped into one delicious nugget of whatever.
Yep. Look at you combining both things. That's fantastic. I'm going to go, and sure, you probably can. People, even though it's not what I think is a bold take, I can totally understand why people will think it's a bold take. Wide receiver 46. Give me Odell Beckham Jr. this week. No Jarvis Landry. Odell's finally coming back off of injury. You look at the target distribution here for the wide receiver position for the Browns. Landry, 6. He's no longer there. Anthony Schwartz, there with 6 also. But you look at the snap percentage. Let me go pull that up really quickly as I'm stalling because I didn't have this prepped ahead of time because I'm not awesome. Snaps, he's playing 50% of snaps compared. Yeah, so I think Beckham is going to be the funnel that these targets are going to go through, assuming he's healthy, which he is because he's playing. The way Stefanski has been giving everybody the runaround, whether or not he's going to play, isn't he? I don't think he'd put him back on the field unless he was 100% ready to go. And against the Browns, who are, like, according to PFF, ranked 22nd in coverage, this is a prime matchup for Odell Beckham this week. So give me Odell Beckham at the wide receiver position. Let's quickly go through some IDP. Again, going off of the Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. Nate, who do you got outside the top 25 at defensive line?
So defensive line, I really focused on really outside top 12, just because there's certain leagues that have a defensive tackle option, defensive end, and Leonard Williams kind of fits the mold for both. I love this matchup this week. He's kind of similar to Cole Beasley. I find these guys that I like in the matchups, and I stick with them. He gets a gentleman by the name of Jalen Mayfield. Jalen Mayfield has probably heard his name. I'm sure he listens to all my shows that I'm on. But his name has been mentioned more this week than it's probably ever been mentioned, short of Atlanta Falcons Twitter, who I've read through, and holy hell, that poor guy deserves a hug right now for all the FUs and everything. But he got the back vote of confidence. He's going to be in there. Problem is he allows every person lines up opposite him to absolutely crush. And I feel bad for Matt Ryan this week, to be honest. Back Leonard Williams, I think 1.5 sacks is kind of the established floor for him. Nice.
I'm going to cheat. This guy is at 12, but it's kind of hard to ignore. You look at the worst pass blocking unit in the NFL is the Miami Dolphins. You talked about him last week. I think people should know the name Max Crosby by now. You saw what he did against the Ravens and Lamar Jackson in Week 1. He carried that on against the Steelers. Yeah, I mean, the matchup doesn't get anybody. Jacoby Brissett, he's not running away from anybody. Max Crosby is going to eat this week. If he's still on your waiver wire for IDP, if you have a defensive line dedicated spot, he shouldn't be. So go grab him and put him on your roster and start him this week. What about a linebacker, Nate? Who's somebody you got a linebacker?
Probably for the last week we can name him. Nick Vigil stepped in for Anthony Barr. Barr's out again. Nick Vigil's done nothing short of play that Eric Wilson role, but even a little bit better. That pick 6 last week kind of padded the stats just a little bit. But this matchup, I feel like personally, I think Seattle controls the game a little bit more so. I think he's going to be on the field enough that it should be a Nick Vigil game. He's already, he's finishing, and he's an LB1 right now, being started as like an LB3 flex option right now.
Right. And even when Barr comes back, I don't know if that's gonna. I don't know how much you're going to see Barr on the field. To be honest with you, in terms of snaps.
I think it's snaps though. That's the problem. Is I would rather not have a rotational piece. I want 100. If I can get 100%,
sure,
or as close to that as possible, that's what I want.
That's a very good point. For me, it's going to be a Jalen Smith. With the move of Micah Parsons being shifted towards defensive end, Jalen Smith last week in Week 2 played a position leading 76.1% of the snaps. He had. What did he have? 9 tackles last week, 6 solos, 3 assisted. I think against this Eagles team, against the running backs, especially with the running backs like Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell, who are now being incorporated more into the passing game, which is something that all the Sanders truthers were hoping that he was going to be incorporated more into this year. It's happening. And with Micah Parsons going to defensive end, I think Jalen Smith, he's probably. And no Keanu Neal either. He's not even going to play for the Cowboys. So I think Jalen Smith is going to give you the tackle upside that you'll be wanting to have this week. Then let's go defensive back. Nate, who do you got?
Give it a 2-for-1 special. Same game, damn near same position. Mike Hilton and Minkah Fitzpatrick. All for the reasons I mentioned during the show. I think both are probably peppered with targets, at least in their direction. Mike Hilton has one advantage, I think, over Minkah is that I don't know if it's an advantage. I think that Mike Hilton has an opportunity to rush the quarterback a little bit more this week. He's already top 3 in the NFL amongst all corners in terms of pass rushes. So I think you can see that O-line for Pittsburgh is pretty weak, pretty soft. And maybe it's a revenge game, like I was saying. It's a little tongue-in-cheek, but they did say, they were joking that Najee Harris actually said, I didn't even know he played for the Steelers. So maybe that's the motivation that he needs. So maybe we'll see Mike Hilton turn in that DB1 overall performance this week. Maybe you heard it here first.
We got some news coming out here that apparently Leonard Fournette is going to be starting today for the Buccaneers going against the Rams. Anybody bumping up Fournette high in their rankings or willing to take a gamble on him? I'm assuming it's no Ronald Jones this week, but Mike, are you plugged into that?
Well, there's a couple places where I have to start him, but I think you could do worse as a flex play. You know what I mean? Like,
it's going to be a high-scoring game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I just wish that we knew what in the world they were doing down there in Tampa Bay with the running back situation.
I think all the opposing defenses wish that they were doing with the running back situation there in Tampa Bay.
Let us know. Come on.
Yeah. Well, okay. Since you went 2 for 1, I'll go 2 for 1 for this one, and I'll stick in that game. I think Carlton Davis, who is at the DB 50, according to Fantasy Pros, the passes defense volume is going to be there. And I know it's hard to. It's not really a sticky stat, as Nate you'd like to call these stats, or you can count on passes defense, week in and week out. But this is going to be a high volume passing game. I think you're going to see Carlton Davis go up against Cooper Kupp. I think Robert Woods is going to be more in the slot, which is going to favor Robert Woods, I think, this week more so. I think you're going to see him finally have his breakout game this week. Malcolm Merriweather, we've got Parsons, Perryman, Derwin James, Kendrick. Who do I sit? You sit Perryman.
Yeah.
Denzel Perryman. It's Kendrick. I think for me, mate, you could disagree. I think for me it goes Kendrick, Parsons, Derwin, just because I like Kendrick. He is hurt. He got banged up, but he is clear to play. Parsons, if Parsons would have stayed at linebacker as opposed to switching to defensive end, I'd give him probably the bump there. But now you're taking away the tackle volume from Parsons by having him line up at the defensive end. So, but he still can make plays in that position. And then Derwin
no
James,
doubt.
he's a monster.
Mike Parsons, I mean, in one game at defensive end, he almost he's in the top 3 in pressures amongst all defensive linemen. So, I mean, the talent's there. The question I have is one thing that was mentioned is, will Micah Parsons drop back into a kind of a spy type role as well? They said that they might have him, line up in the box and then drop back and try to keep an eye on Jalen Hurts. It's unknown. That just without a defined role, I'd put him in the same order you do. Here's a couple of the things that have just come out, and tell me what you guys think. Number one is Devontae Booker is out, inactive. Does that mean that Saquon Barkley is actually back to 95% health, 90%? Are we looking for 80% and better?
I'm looking for over 17 fantasy points from Saquon Barkley this week. That's what I'm looking at. I think he's back. I think he comes back. This is too good of a matchup for all these Giants players to not cash in. Sans Kenny Galladay, because apparently,
who is active as well.
Yeah, I think Saquon has a pretty decent game this week.
Good matchup.
Okay, my second cornerback is Quandre Diggs for the Seahawks. Like he's basically like attack. He doesn't get you interceptions. He doesn't get you a lot of passes defense. What he does get you are the tackle numbers: 9 tackles week 1, 10 tackles week 2. Going against a pass-heavy Vikings offense, I think he delivers again this week. So fire up Carlton Davis and Quandre Diggs at your defensive back position. And with that, let's get into some monkey knife fight props. We're going to do some over-unders, and we're going to do that at the fantasy point using the fantasy points over-unders. So let's go here to our first one. We pull it up on screen. Share screen. I can press buttons on my computer. There we go. Okay, first one. Let me take this banner down. All right, Brian, you got to head out.
Yeah, take care, guys.
All right, take it easy, Brian.
Good seeing you, Brian.
All right, so we're just going to go around and answer these questions. Bauer, we'll start with you. Buccaneers at Rams. Cooper Kupp over. And this is all PPR scoring. Cooper Kupp over or more or less than 20.5 fantasy points.
Less.
All right, we'll go Jonathan. Chris Godwin, more or less 16.5 fantasy points.
AB is out this week, right?
That is correct.
Yes.
I think, so I'd go more.
All right, Nate. Robert Woods, more or less than 16.5.
I'm going to say more. I think this is the week that it turns. I think this is more the Robert Woods game, and maybe he had breakfast with Jared Goff. I keep doing that every time, and I know it's Matthew Stafford, and I might keep doing it. But yeah, I'm going to take the over 16.5. Yeah, I think the touchdown he scores does that alone.
I'm going to go Mike Evans over or more or less than 15.5. I go less. I think Jalen Ramsey is going to shut him down pretty well. Going back to Bauer, Tom Brady, more or less than 22.5 fantasy points.
More.
Jonathan.
I might go over 30 fantasy points in this game, to be honest with you.
I'm telling you, some of these are smash plays over at Monkey Knife Fight. If you use the promo code FRAMES, you get a 100% match up to $100 on your first deposit using the promo code FRAMES at Monkey Knife Fight. Jonathan Matthew Stafford, more or less than 21.5 fantasy points.
Yeah, I'm going more here as well. I think they'll lean on the pass with Darrell Henderson probably out.
All right, let's go to Eagles at Cowboys. Again, smash plays, I feel. Nate, Dak Prescott, more or less than 23.5 fantasy points.
Yeah, you can probably invert all 3 of those numbers together, and you might have it could be 32 for Dak. But yeah, I say over.
Bauer, more or less 22.5 for Jalen Hurts.
My favorite quarterback of all time. I'm going to take more for Jalen Hurts.
Insert heavy sarcasm. Jonathan,
Yes.
more or less, again, PPR scoring for Amari Cooper, 17.5.
Yeah, if it's PPR, I'll say more.
Nate, for Devonta Smith, the rookie, 13.5.
That one's the only one of this entire group that I worry, because I think he's entirely going to be touchdown dependent to get that. So I'm going to take the under there.
I don't disagree with that. I think Diggs for the quarterback for Cowboys is kind of an underrated guy from a coverage perspective. I could see that happening. You go CeeDee Lamb, more or less 17.5. Give me more. Mike, back to you. Miles Sanders, more or less than 14.5.
I'm going to say more. I'm only saying more because Micah Parsons is not playing linebacker. He's playing defensive end, which, by the way, Jordan Mailata is officially ruled out. So Andre Dillard is going to be starting at left tackle.
Didn't they just sign Mailata to a huge extension
They
recently?
did. He rolled up his knee in practice on Wednesday or Thursday. So I want to start an awareness campaign for Jalen Hurts now with having Andre Dillard blocking for him. You know, prayers up for Jalen Hurts on Monday night in Dallas because Dillard sucks.
Wow. Okay, I have to stop what I'm doing right now.
And you, Nick, go.
Did I throw you off your game there, Jorge? Sorry about that.
I just screwed up my screens. Let's go here to next. Was it Cardinals and Jags? Kyler Murray over and under 26.5. Jonathan.
Yeah, more. He's hit that in over that in both games so far. So yeah,
Trevor Lawrence, Nate, more or less than 17.5.
I don't trust the book that it's only a 7-point game for these two. I think that he's going to have to be. I think he's going to be throwing from quarter 1.25 on. So I'm going to say junkyards give him the over.
All right, DeAndre Hopkins, more or less is 17.5 with a banged up rib situation. Yes, I think he scores early, gets his stuff out of the way, gets his production out of the way, and then kind of seeds touches or reps as the game goes on, because I think this will be a blowout. Marvin Jones, more or less than 14.5. Mike.
I'm going to take the less on this one. I feel like this might be a DJ Chark or Laviska Shenault game, personally.
Okay. Jonathan, Chase Edmonds, more or less than 13.5.
You see, there's part of me which thinks this could be a blowout as well, which there's part of me which thinks that James Conner might get a little bit more run. If it's PPR, full PPR, I'll probably still go more just because, he's seen plenty of targets.
All right, Nate, James Robinson, more or less than 12.5.
A lot of that junk from Trevor Lawrence is going to be in the way of dump offs to James Robinson. And I think he'll get the over more than 12.5.
All right, so just to give you an idea, the Bucks Rams has an over under of 55.5, Eagles Cowboys 51.5, this Cardinals Jaguars game 51.5. Let's go to the over under for our last matchup for Falcons at Giants 47.5. So this is the lowest one out of all the ones we have for today. And I guess my screen decides to stop working, so let me hold up on that and do this. All right, so back to said screen. Yay, technical difficulties, fantastic. All right, Giants, here we go. Falcons, Giants. Daniel Jones, this is mine. Daniel Jones, more or less than 20.5 fantasy points. Give me more. Matt Ryan, more or less than 19.5. More. All right, Jonathan, Calvin Ridley, more or less than 18.5.
This is a lot tougher than it should be. Has he even hit 18.5 this year?
I can't see it.
In PPR, I'm not sure. Here's okay. So if I can give you my take on this, I was concerned about the Bradbury shadow for Terry McLaurin a couple weeks ago, and I learned my lesson. There's something off with Bradbury. I don't know whether it's the caliber receiver he faces, the more difficult it is, the harder it is for him to shut people down. It really comes down to, for me, do I think Calvin Ridley is better than Terry McLaurin? I want to say, at this point in their respective careers, yes. So I'm not scared of Bradbury lining up against Calvin Ridley. So I would go with more here, but that's just me.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Nate, Saquon Barkley, more or less than 17.5.
You know, I think he with the news about Devontae Booker not playing and not even interfering with any of the touches, I'm going to say the over. I think this is a Barkley breakout game. All
right. So for me, Sterling Shepard, more or less than 14.5. I'm going to go less. I think Evan Ingram cuts into this target volume situation here. for the Giants, and you're going to see the ball spread out a little bit more than Sterling Shepard. God forbid Kenny Galladay does something. And then Mike will finish with the last prop of the day for Falcons at Giants. Mike Davis, more or less than 12.5 fantasy points. He has been leading the backfield in snaps. Cordell Patterson just has been taking advantage more of the snaps he's had. Are you more or less than 12.5 points comfortable for Mike Davis?
I'm not comfortable with Mike Davis at all. I'm going to take less, man. Cordell Patterson getting less snaps, you get more points, getting more yards. And, by the way, if you have CMC, pick up Chuba Hubbard. CMC is out for a couple weeks. Yes. I know we didn't really talk about that. So pick up Chuba Hubbard or Rice Freeman. Royce, not Rice. If he's sorry.
Nice. I like Rice.
Nice. All right. Well, folks, that does it for our Forward pregame show this week. We'll be back with you next week. And, of course, you can catch us on Wednesdays from 8 to 9 doing the Fourth and Frames show on offense. Then from 9 to 10 doing the Fourth and Frames IDP edition show. Check out our Forward recap from the weekend tomorrow. Then our starts and sits, not starts and sits, our waiver wires on offense and defense on Tuesday, starts and sits on Wednesdays. And then we got quarterbacks and tight end matchups. We got running back matchups, wide receiver matchups, and then IDP matchups throughout the week. And then we're right back here helping you get ready for your weekend fantasy football awesomeness. So, guys, thank you very much for coming on. Mike, thank you very much for joining us this week. Great having you back. Jonathan, as always, from across the pond. Love hearing your analysis. Oh, by the way, Jonathan, Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods this week?
I'm going to disagree with a Kupp Woods take before. I think it's still Cooper Kupp.
Nice. You thought you were going to get away with that?
Oh no, I was surprised.
We were close. I almost forgot. Nate, anything else you want to impart upon the Forward fans and listeners out there?
No. I'm just trying to get now.
Now it's setting. Now it's
45 lineups set. Yeah, exactly.
I have something I would like to say.
Go for it.
Quintez Cephas.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thanks later.
Fair enough.
Start him
in your DFS lineup. Yeah. All right,
I have my head of.
I have him in a couple of lineups already, just so you know. And I'm starting him in actual fantasy leagues this week too, because there was a league where my two flex spots were Elijah Mitchell and Josh Jacobs, who's doubtful right now. So I wanted to get Quintez in there. I believe he's an early game. I don't want to have a doubtful for 4:00, and I had nobody on my bench that was going to be playing a 4:00 Sunday night or Monday night game. So I had to roll the dice and put somebody in there. So
yeah, that's a good point.
What are you gonna do? It was a catch that he nearly came down with last week. That was just ridiculous.
Yeah, and you know what? I think Jared Goff is a good fantasy quarterback too. Who cares if it's garbage time? It's like Blake Bortles used to be. Don't watch it. Just look at the points at the end.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Nope.
Nice.
Good call.
Very, very true. All right, I'm Jorge. For everybody here, thank you very much for joining us, and good luck this week in week 3, and we will see you next week.